Like I say, I know it's Memorial Day, and as I was thinking about the message, what do? I was reminded of a conversation I had recently when I had lunch with Chief Winchester, who, by the way, I know he is sweating it out right now. I happen to know that one of his lifelong dreams has been to see the Indianapolis 500 race. He is in Indianapolis. They've had a little rain. So the race hasn't started yet, okay? You may not miss any of it, okay? Or you may miss it all because it may not happen. But it's going to happen. The track's getting dry and they're going to start. But Ed has always wanted to go and see that race in person. And he's there. But he said to me in conversation, Bufe, we are in a tremendous spiritual battle in this town. He's not just talking about difficulties in the police department. He's talking about spiritual battles across this city. And I could just lay out a litany of things that are happening in this city to people in primary positions that have come under such tremendous attack from Satan that they folded their tent. Spiritual struggle. And a part of the problem for those of us that feel like we're in the front lines is we look around and it's so dadgum far from the front lines to back where some of you are. Hello? You're in the supply line. Yes, God bless you. Safe and secure in the supply line. I want to encourage you to get a little closer to the action. And that's why listening to Mark sing that song, Standing for Holiness and Righteousness. I was given a copy of that just early in the week. And I read those words many times and decided this is what I want to preach on today. I want to talk about a real biblical character who understood something about standing for holiness and righteousness, who understood the disciplines of durability. I don't know whether you ever think about the epitaph on your tombstone, but I think about some statements concerning this man, short biography of who he was, and I looked at several translations of this little 2 or 3 or 4 word phrase concerning who he was. One translation says he endured. Another says in the same place, he kept right on going. Another says he was resolute. Another says he persevered. Another says he held staunchly to his purpose. And finally, old Moffat's translation says he never flinched. Boy, I like that. He never flinched. You see that chiseled on the tombstone? There's only one problem. The guy that you could chisel any of these on his tombstone, he's buried somewhere, but nobody knows where. God buried him. That's Moses. And there's no records on the mountain up there somewhere. There's no place for people to go and build a shrine. And that's good. One of the most disheartening things about traveling to Israel is all the shrines you get into. You get weary of the shrine. You just want to see the place. And sure enough, if people knew where Moses was buried, there'd be some kind of a little temple there. And you'd be paying a little money. You know how those little temple things go. And you'd be buying little doodads to bring home to people to say, I was really right here. And I saw his tombstone. I read the epitaph, and God said, I'm not going to have that foolishness. You see, Moses had staying power. In Ephesians, that passage that I had Marty read to you, the reminder in verse 13 is this. Use every piece of God's armor to resist the enemy in the time of evil, so that after the battle, you'll still be standing firm. Now, part of the problem is we have a huge percentage of believers that don't even recognize the fact that they're in a battle. There is a war going on. You're doing your little thing. Life is just a bowl of cherries. Boy, I got some of those the other day from up the mountain here, locally grown. Huh? Oh, they have been wonderful. And I thought as I've been eating it, life is just a bowl of cherries. And that's the way a lot of people are living, because they are oblivious to the war. They find themselves not willing to get into the fracas. And they've gotten very comfortable living on the level they're living. And they don't understand that one day we're going to be called before God and judgment will take place concerning how we live the Christian life. And Moses is such an incredible, incredible example. If you read the Word, don't settle for watching Cecil B. DeMille's 10 Commandments and say, oh yeah, I know the story. You don't know the story of it. If you'll read the book of Exodus, got one assignment and one suggestion this week. One is Ephesians 6, verses 10 to 18. That's the assignment. Another suggestion is read the book of Exodus. It is fascinating. And I hope with some of the things we run over today, you kind of get perked up and think, maybe I need to do some reading in the book of Exodus. Because it is a grand and glorious story, and it's got every kind of suspense that you can think of that recount to us the story of Moses, where no amount of odds against him would cause him to surrender. Just a kind of a thumbnail sketch of who he was, if you've forgotten or if you've never really known. Number one, he had good bloodlines. Now, he didn't have a thing in the world to do with that, but he's always good to look back and say, man, I got good bloodlines. Here's what my folks taught me. Here's what they demonstrated to me. And as parents, we need to be thinking about, what am I demonstrating to my kids? I just read a Timothy testimony between services, and even though this kid that wrote this testimony, this young man, had lots of disappointment with his father, he said, there's some things my dad did, with all the bad things he did, one, he never lied to me. He encouraged me to set a standard and stay with it. See, there's some great things you need to leave your kids. And that's one of them. Truthfulness. Anybody can do that if they will. Moses had these great bloodlines because his parents had faith and courage against all odds. And remember, the children of Israel were living in Egypt. They had been there about 350, 360 years when Moses was born. And the order was that all the Israeli baby boys were to be killed as soon as they were born, because the population is getting too strong. Let's get rid of them. We got plenty of slaves, 2.5 million, 2.25 million. We got plenty. We're getting the job done. We don't need any more of these Israelis. They're getting to be too powerful as a people, so kill them. That order was out there when Moses was born, and his parents would look at him and said, boy, he's a good-looking kid. I don't know any parents that look at their kid and don't say he's a good-looking kid. Red, wrinkled, little toad, you know, and you know, I hate going to a hospital when a new baby's been born and having the father say, doesn't he look great? You know what I say? That's a baby, man. That's a baby. Huh? Because I'm telling them the truth. It's a baby. But the newborn baby, mine, never looked good to me, okay? So I'm just passing on my same feelings. But they looked at him and they said, that's a special kid. We're going to keep him. And they kept him for 3 months, and then he got to where he was hollering, jumping up and down, making a bunch of noise. They say they're going to find him. Mama makes a basket, puts Moses in the basket, takes it down and puts it in the Nile River, gets Moses' older sister and says, now pay attention to what's going on there. And she's kind of watching from the sideline. Here comes Pharaoh's daughter down to take her a little swim. She finds this basket, opens the lid, it says, and here's this kid inside. And she is captivated by this 3-month-old baby. They look better at 3 months than they do at birth, okay? You know that too. And she said, think I want to keep him. And Miriam runs up and says, do you want a little help? Yes, I do. She knew he was an Israeli. See, to me, that's one of the interesting things. They're all supposed to be killed. And she knew it was an Israeli and didn't kill him. Yeah, I want to keep him. Take him to his mother's place. I'll pay her for taking care of him. Wouldn't some of you moms like that? I mean, that's a government deal, but I mean, somebody paying you real money to take care of your own kid. And when he gets up a little ways, bring him to the palace, and I'll take care of him from there on. And that's how it worked out. Overwhelming, incredible faith of those parents. And you know that Moses heard that story coming up the line of what had happened at his birth and all of that kind of thing, but he never forgot who he was. See, when he moved to the palace, Egypt was some kind of incredible, wonderful, wonderful power, world power at that time. If you travel to Egypt today, not one of my favorite places. I would not go back to Egypt. I've been there. Thanks a lot. I don't need to go back. Just not a friendly place. Not a place where you feel good. Not a place where they say, oh, we're so glad you're here. You feel like they're looking for a way to steal everything from you. And they'll take anything they can get. You just don't. Well, I didn't feel good, and nobody in our group felt good. We were glad when we got out of there. But you go and look at all the great stuff that's there. The pyramids. How in Sam Hill did they build those things? I don't know, but Moses knew. He didn't ever bother to tell us in the Word, but he knew. Here's the Sphinx. Moses saw that. When I was over there, I was thinking about all the stuff I was seeing that Moses had seen, knew how it got together, knew how it was put there. Here he's in the palace until he's 40 years old, but he never forgot who he was. He was an Israeli with all of the teaching and training and education and all the culture of Egypt being poured out on him. But he always remembered who he was. The scripture tells us in the book of Exodus that he went out one day to visit his people. His people are slaves. And he goes out to visit them because he was not afraid to be identified with them. And when he got there, one of the Egyptians is flogging one of the Israelis. And here Moses, I think part of his training was physical training as well as the mental training and all of the cultural training. And Moses reached out and decked him and killed him in one shot. And then said to himself, I really didn't mean to do that. Dug a hole, buried him. And the next day, Moses, thinking nobody saw this, except the guy whose life he saved. The next day, Moses is out there, and two of the Israelis are in some kind of a quarrel over something, and Moses tries to settle a quarrel, and one of the guys says, oh, if we don't settle up, you're going to kill one of us like you did that Egyptian yesterday? And Moses said, I think I'll leave town. Because word had gotten back to Pharaoh, and Pharaoh said, I'm going to kill the guy that did this. And he left Egypt, and he went to the backside of the desert. He's 40 years old. And he gets out there, and for 40 years, he's a shepherd. Highly overqualified to be a shepherd. But there he is, got to earn a living. He gets married. He's got a couple of kids. And one day, a bush is burning. Now, this may trigger some memories in your mind, some stories you heard. Maybe you've never read the book of Exodus. But this bush is burning, but it's not being consumed. Moses said, I got to check this out. And he heads over there and takes a look, and God says, take off your shoes. This is holy ground. Takes off his shoes, said, yes, sir. God said, I got work for you to do, Moses. I want you to go back to Egypt, and I want you to lead my people out. Your people are my people. I want you to lead. They're slaves. They've been here 400 years plus. I want you to go get them out. And Moses gave a long list of excuses why he couldn't do it, and God overcame all the excuses and finally said, okay, I'll go. And he packed up his family and headed back to Egypt. Now remember, last time he was there, the word was out, kill him. And although they had undoubtedly changed pharaohs in that time, the word was still out. But he went with great gusto to do the job that God had called him to do. And as he got there, he went to Pharaoh and he said, God says, let my people go. And a little argument ensued, and ultimately Moses said, okay, you won't let them go? We're going to bring down a plague on you. And the first plague was the blood. Remember, all the water turned blood. What if you got up this morning, turn on the faucet, get a little drink of water? Blood. Huh? You turn on the other faucet, you go to the other bathroom, you go to the kitchen sink, it's blood, blood, blood everywhere. And Pharaoh finally said, okay, clear up this mess and I'll let you go. Moses cleared up the mess, and immediately Pharaoh said, you can't go. Moses said, step 2, got another plague for you. How about frogs? Frogs in your bed, frogs in your kitchen, frogs on the road, frogs everywhere. Just can't stand it. The frogs are not an occasional frog, they're everywhere. And Pharaoh says, man, clear up the frogs. And Moses said, when do you want me to do it? Some of you guys remember Jay Kessler preaching a sermon over at men's conference a few years ago entitled One More Night with the Frogs. Because when Moses said to Pharaoh, when do you want me to clean up this frog deal? And Moses said, tomorrow. Let's keep them around one more night. You know, they're kind of cute. So the next day, Moses prays, frogs are gone. Pharaoh says, can't go. Moses said, got another great one for you here. Gnats. G-N-A-T-S, gnats. Can you just see them? Huh? In your ears, in your mouth, huh? They're everywhere. Listen, when God does a thing, he does it in a fabulous manner to absolutely overwhelm you. And here are these gnats. Finally, Pharaoh says, enough, enough, enough. Yes, I'll let you go. Moses clears out the gnats, and Pharaoh says, can't go. We'll grow those gnats up a little bit. Next plague is flies. Remember the last picnic you went on? Huh? You had a few to brush away. Little church I used to pastor up here in the country, they'd have picnics at that little church. Roberta, to this day, can't stand to think about those picnics and those dinners at the church. In fact, we're going to be up there August 20th. It's the 75th anniversary of that church, and I'm there to preach that day, and we're going to have dinner with those folks, and she's already looking forward to the flies. Oh, you know, we're right out there where people got all those dairies, all those great flies been walking through all that cow manure, you know, huh? Then they come over and crawl over your pie and your cake and your spaghetti, and yeah. And here are these flies. And Pharaoh says, enough of these. I'll let you go. Moses clears them out. I won't let you go. Moses said, okay, we're going to get a little into your pocketbook now. Your cattle are going to die. Now remember something. The children of Israel lived in a province in Egypt called Goshen. I always think about them when I drive south on 99. When I go through Goshen, I say to myself, same name, different place. This is not some sensational place here, Goshen. But God's people lived in Goshen. And the blood, and the frogs, and the gnats, and the flies, none of those showed up inside the borders of Goshen. All these Hebrews are there, they're doing their thing, and they don't have these problems. But right across the county line, whoo! Amazing what God could do. Just like he puts up a shield. Okay, gnats, you can't go past the shield. No flies over here. Ain't no flies on us. Maybe that's where the song came from. Maybe flies on you guys, but ain't no flies on us. said the livestock are going to die, and sure enough, overnight, the livestock of Egypt is dead. Oh, stinking, miserable, dead flesh laid on him. Okay, I'll let him go. And then he says, can't go. Then they did the boils on everybody's body. Had a good boil lately? I mean, just one good one. Put them all over your body. And that's what happened. And Pharaoh, you know, he's getting all these goodies too. Not like the palace is off limits. And he says, enough. Moses clears up the boils. Pharaoh says, can't go. Then comes the hail. Mashing and destroying the crops. Enough, I'll let him go. And he wouldn't do it. Then come the locusts. And destroying what crops are left from the hail. The locusts come through and just gobble up everything. Okay, I'll let them go. Then comes the darkness. Then finally comes death for the firstborn. And a wail went up in Egypt that was something. Moses had given instructions, if you'll kill an animal and take the blood and put it on the sides of the doors and over the door, not on the threshold. This is a picture of the Son of God that would come and lay down his life. Without the shedding blood, there's no forgiveness of sins. This is looking ahead to that's going to happen. All you have to do is put the blood there. Egyptian, Israeli, whoever, and your firstborn child will not die. But if you don't have the blood there. And there was a wailing that went up in Egypt that was terrible. And Pharaoh said, okay, get them out of here. And God had given them instruction. Just kind of a ho-ho. They'd been slaves for 400 plus years. Slaves don't make much money. You know that, don't you? You think you're a slave, huh? They don't make much money. And God said, now look, you're going to leave. Borrow everything you can from the Egyptians. All the gold and silver and fine pottery and all the good precious jewels. Borrow everything you can. It's kind of like retroactive pay. I'm going to catch you guys up just overnight. And the Egyptians liked these people. And they loan them all this stuff, and they load it up and head out in the desert. And there they go, and everything is looking good until they get to the Red Sea. And the Red Sea, a formidable thing. 2.25 million people, from old folks to little bitty babies being born along the way. So I see this thing as real. I see some gal, you know, she's 9 months pregnant, trudging up the road, whoopee, wait a minute, time to take a break. Baby's born by the side of the road. They named that kid Roadside. You know, I'm not sure what they did, but yeah, it had some way to give that kid the right kind of a name. And they get there, and there's the Red Sea. And by now, Pharaoh has said, I am really angry. Look at all these dead kids. And he gets his 600 best chariot guys. They get in hot pursuit. And the people begin to murmur to Moses. I want to tell you something. Murmuring people can take more out of you than you can ever possibly imagine. And I'm not here singing a sad tune as a pastor. I'm in this great church. There's not a lot of murmuring here. And part of it is style of leadership. I learned my style of leadership from the Lord. See, over here, as Pharaoh's army approached, the people of Israel could see him in the distance, and they began to panic, and they cried out to the Lord for help. And then they turned to Moses and complained and said, why did you bring us out here to die in the wilderness? Weren't there enough graves in Egypt for us? Why did you make us leave? Don't forget. We told you to leave us alone while we were still in Egypt. Oh, they love being slaves. People forget so easily what they were when they start complaining and crabbing. Our Egyptian slavery was far better than dying out here in the wilderness. And Moses told the people, Don't be afraid. Just stand where you are and watch the Lord rescue you. The Egyptians that you see today will never be seen again. The Lord himself will fight for you. You won't have to lift a finger in your defense. People, we don't know how to trust God like that. Some of us are absolutely running like madmen to try to figure out how to change things politically in this country. We can't stand any more time with the Clinton-Gore bunch, and we're going to work like mad to get them thrown out. Or we know it's been the best thing in the world because we got more money than we've ever had. Keep them in there. Everything's really good because, man, my pockets are loaded. You don't have to lift a finger if you're going to trust God to take care of you. Oh, you need to vote. But spending all your time running with petitions and trying to get everybody to sign up, and you see how heavily we move things when we did all those petitions to stop Clinton from declaring this thing a monument up here where Hume Lake is? That's what it amounted to. All those petitions. Spit in the wind, right back all over your face, and you haven't done anything to help anybody. Let's let the Lord fight for us. Let's figure, I don't have to lift a finger. I'm going to pray. I'm going to trust God. I'm going to stand in this place, and I'm going to watch God at work. And Moses told the people, you won't have to lift a finger. And then the Lord said to Moses, this is what I like. This is lesson number 1 in leadership that I learned somewhere along the way. Why are you crying out to me? Tell the people to get moving. I occasionally have folks say, you are entirely too blunt. Occasionally. I learned it right here. The Lord said, tell them to get moving. Stop all this talk and this carrying on. Let's get going. Remember, they went through that Red Sea place on dry ground and got piled up the water. They got through. And as they finished getting through, and you know, this is not a 30-minute deal, folks. You're taking 2.25 million people through. They are just creeping along. This is days. While the Egyptians are running around, wheels falling off their chariots and all kinds of problems, cursing, going crazy while it's all happening. And finally, they're all across, and the Israelis say, here come the Egyptians. What are we going to do now? And Moses said, no problem. And he waits till those 600 chariots get down in the trough and then holds out his staff. I kind of want to think that Moses said, bye-bye. Holds out his staff, the water comes. They're all drowned. He had said, you'll never see them again. Gutsy leadership. A strong guy trusting God and getting on. And you know, I haven't got time to go into it, but read Exodus. All the murmuring and misunderstanding and alignment that Moses went through is overwhelming. The loneliness he paid for being at the top. But he stayed firm and he endured. And when I say, how did he stay firm? Hebrews 11. Just listen to this. It was by faith that Moses left the land of Egypt. He was not afraid of the king. He kept right on going because he kept his eyes on the one who is invisible. Ha! Hey, that's an oxymoron. He kept his eyes on the one who is invisible. How do you do that? The eye of faith. You can see stuff that other people can't see. How are we going to get out of this place? How are we going to get over what? Just trust God. Let's just trust the Lord. See, I want to ask you, what are you trusting God for that you can't accomplish, that really needs to happen? I pray to God there's some things you're asking God for that only He can do, and you're believing that He can do it. You're keeping your eyes on the one who is invisible. You go to Hebrews chapter 12, and it says this. Since we're surrounded by such a huge crowd of witnesses to the life of faith, let's strip off every weight that slows us down, especially the sin that so easily hinders our progress, and let us run with endurance the race that God has set before us. We do this by keeping our eyes on Jesus, on whom our faith depends from start to finish. Got your eyes on Jesus? Huh? Spending time with him this week in this book? Or do you come to church once again saying, boy, what a loser I am? Well, stop being a loser. Ephesians 6, get the armor of God on every day. Stop going to war with your bare hiney hanging out. Stop going out there and thinking you can make it happen if you're not suited up. And see what happens when you suit up. See, the scripture says when the battle's over, you can still be standing. That's the promise of God. And I challenge you, get in the book and ask yourself, have I ever gone into a place where I've got into an endurance contest like Moses was in and came out standing when the whole thing was over? Father, help us today, I pray. God, help us to understand that you have a purpose for us, to glorify you, to honor you, to be involved in the battle that sees men and women come to Jesus Christ, that sees the power of the church be felt without us lifting a finger, you fighting the battle for us. Pray for those that don't even know you that are here today. They've never perceived that the Christian life is a battle. I pray they would open themselves to say, I know I'm a sinner, I know I'm lost, I know I have no relationship with God. I'd like to put something together. Help them to pull a card and fill it out and let us help them. Move upon us, Father, I pray. In the name of the living Lord Jesus Christ.